Good afternoon and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you through the Hertfordshire Opportunities portal, which hopefully, if you're not already aware of it, you will be able to see on your screens at the moment. So HOP is a website designed specifically for young people and students from Hertfordshire schools. And the idea of HOP is that it's a one-stop shop for you to find out about a whole host of careers information that may be relevant for you. Now, today we are going to be concentrating on careers in games technology, and I've got a fantastic panel here to share some of their experiences with you. So I'll introduce you to those in just a moment. But let me just tell you what we hope that we will get out of today. So we hope by hearing directly from our panelists who are doing things that probably are things that you want to do within your careers within the next few years. So we hope that off the back of today, you will learn about some of the different roles within games technology. You'll find out the sorts of skills, qualities and qualifications that you might need to go into that career. So we can talk specifically around school subjects that you might choose, or possibly whether you need to go to university, whether there's any other routes into it. And we'll also find out whether this is a career with good prospects for the future. And spoiler alert, it definitely is. So hopefully this will be a career that many of you will want to pursue even further. Let me just give you a bit of housekeeping about this session. So we are live at the moment. So if you are watching this anywhere in the afternoon of Thursday, the 11th of March, this is going out live. For any of you that are watching at the moment, just rest assured we can't see or hear you, so you are anonymous. But hopefully you will be able to see and hear us as we go through this presentation. What we really encourage you to do, though, is to submit any questions you might have to our panelists. So when you hear the sorts of things they're talking about, this is your opportunity to ask them some questions very directly that might help you. So the way you do that, on your dashboard on your screen, you'll see that there's a questions tab. So if you click on the questions tab, it opens up a text box and you can type your question in there. That question will only be visible to me, and then I will direct it through to the panelists. So no one else will see your questions, and we won't use your names in the questions as well, just to give you a bit of confidentiality. And then those questions, I say, will be answered by our panelists. And if you've got any follow-up questions, of course, you can submit those. A couple of you have already submitted questions when you put your registration. So I've made a note of those, and we will ask those towards the end of the presentation. But say any more, please do keep those questions in. It's really important that you use that opportunity that you've given yourself by logging in now that you can. This session is being recorded. It will be available via our HOP website, which I've showed you and I will remind you of later, as well as all the previous webinars that we've recorded in the past. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce you to our panelists so you can find out a little bit more about them and how they might be able to help you today. So our panelists are, we have Oliver Hewison, who is a second-year games technology student at the University of West England, and he went to sixth form in Chancellor's, which is in Brookman's Park, so he's very much one of our own. We have with us Neil Gallagher, who is a senior lecturer at the University of Hertfordshire, and we also have Gabs Wald with us, who is a recruitment manager at the Anzo Group. So this is actually a company that employs people within the games technology industry. So very much welcome to the three of you. And Oliver, perhaps if you'd like to start by telling us a little bit about you, talk us back from going into sixth form, the subjects you've chosen and where you are today, please.
Okay, well, I started in sixth form. I decided I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at the time, so I decided to go for subjects that I enjoyed, which were computer science, physics, and product design. And out of those, once I finished sixth form, when I was applying to universities, I was very much in the mindset that I wanted to go into computer science or any kind of programming role. On one of my open days, I was introduced to a games technology course, and I ended up going down that route. So right now, I'm a second-year games technology student at University of the West of England, which is in Bristol. I'm also currently working doing VR development using the Unity engine as a part-time job in the spare time. And throughout my course, I'm kind of developing a large portfolio to ready myself for coming into the working environment.
Thank you very much, Oliver. So look, I'm sure many of you may well be in exactly the same position that Oliver was in, maybe just 5 or 6 years ago. So please tap into his experience and the decisions that he's made and just described for you as we go through. Neil, over to you.
It wasn't 5 or 6 years for me. God blimey, it's like decades now. I started way back in '97 in the games industry. I started a company called Rare. We were making Nintendo products at the time. We got bought out by Microsoft. And I was there about 6 years doing a range of games there. I switched over to visual effects. I wanted to try that in London and Soho. So I was making TV commercials, music videos, bits of film work. Did that for a couple of years. Took a year out, traveled with my wife for a year around the world. Came back and went to a company called Kuju down in Brighton. And then a couple of years later, I thought I'll try lecturing because that's something different. And I've been stuck here ever since. It's been 14 years now. It's pretty crazy how quick that's gone. So yeah, pretty varied. Since joining the University of Hertfordshire, I've had to become an academic. So I've had to take all sorts of qualifications, PG certs and CPAD course, and I did a Master's by Research. So I feel the pain of my students. I've had to do lots of research myself. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Neil. And then Gabs, well, tell us a little bit about you and specifically what you do, and tell us a little bit about the organisation you work for as well.
Thanks, Gareth. So hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Gabs. I am the recruitment manager for a holding company called Anzo Group, and one of the businesses that we have within Anzo Group is Roxor Gaming. So I've been in recruitment probably for about 12 years now, and coming up to about 6 years in the gaming industry. I love working in the industry, and hopefully it will be many more years to come that I stay here. So Roxor Gaming are a games business development company. So essentially we create games for the gambling industry and we sell them to different operators who will then put them on their websites. We have about 150 people in London, and we're partnered with another games studio based in Table Mountain in South Africa. Roxor have been building games for over 15 years, so building game content for over 15 years, and currently have approximately 150 games live in the marketplace, but they're always creating new ones every day. So within Roxor Gaming, we have a huge team of people who are behind the making of the game. So these people will be games mathematicians, business intelligence analysts, designers, art directors, programmers, and also game developers. So I think most people maybe are interested in more of the technology side on this call, on the game development side, but we have programmers as well, which might be of interest. So essentially my job is to just help the teams find the people that they want, so the business can keep growing.
Okay, thanks very much for that introduction, Gabs, and we'll definitely touch on some of the things that you've mentioned within that. So just for those of you that maybe have just joined us, if you have any questions for Oliver, Neil or Gabs as we go through, please do submit those questions to us. You can do that via the questions tab on your dashboard. First level of conversation I wanted to have with you or get some insight from is, what does a games designer actually do? So perhaps, Neil, if I could go to you first, could you just explain for us what are the different areas of games technology? So if I'm thinking about something like Fortnite or Call of Duty or Minecraft, when you see the credits page at the start or the end of that, it's absolutely huge. It's like a Hollywood blockbuster. So there must be so many people involved in creating a game, but what are the different avenues within that?
Just within games itself, or do you want a more broader approach?
Well, yeah, we'll start with games itself, and then we'll work out from
so in games, the three core things that actually create the game, you have games designers, games artists, and games programmers, but there's a whole plethora of like network to support that as well. So yeah, within that, it's very broad. You say like games designer, yeah, that's a very broad field. It's like saying you're an artist. Yeah, okay, what sort of artist? Are you a sculptor? Are you a painter? 3D artist? So I really focus in 3D art. So yeah, it's like you have to like do high resolution modeling, low resolution modeling. You have to do high resolution sculpting in various different software. You have to be able to paint texture. The core background in a lot of that is having good understanding in traditional art skills. So yeah, that's the designers will be sort of like, again, it's a very sort of like broad approach. So it's at the core, you're sort of like designing the game. So I guess it's like crafting a virtual experience is probably the easiest way to explain it, because a lot of people think they're just like storytellers or something, but it's much broader than that. So there's at its core, there's things like you've got to create the lore of this thing that you're building, the systems, the mechanics of the game's design. You'll be thinking about this thing called the Games Bible. It's the games design document, especially on a big sort of production, like you mentioned, a big production game like maybe Assassin's Creed, which can have up to like 5 or 6 studios, up to a workforce of 2,000. So you know, that's really, so this it's not really a document as such. It's more like a wiki that is constantly being evolved and processed. Yeah, and then there's yeah, so the main thing is like you'll be analyzing games, you'll be working out how to make it fun, deconstructing the games, calculating that everything goes into them. Yeah, so that in a nutshell is sort of, but it's much broader. I'm not really an expert in, you know, I shouldn't really be talking about games design because there should be a games designer, but I have worked with games designers and I've helped out on building games documents in the past. So aspects of that has been left to me, and I've made little indie games as well. So but yeah, that's and then programmers, obviously you've got to create the game. That again, it's very broad. So are you just doing like the user interface side of things? Are you doing the networking, getting up and running online? Are you doing the physics? When you throw a grenade, you know, it bounces around how many times, you know, all the weight and the, you know, if the building collapses, what physics are you using for that? So again, it's very, very broad, you know, all these different avenues. So there's but it's down to, you know, how big the game is, what sort of game is it? Is it a small indie game? You know, you can make a game with just one person, and quite successful ones. You know, there's quite a few out there. Or it can be like, but then, like I said, there is this sort of network support of it. You need like production managers, you need producers, art directors. Within art itself, you have like an internship artist, then a junior artist, then an artist, then a senior artist, then a lead artist, then there's like another terminology as well that's it's a new one that's just recently come out, and then yeah, all the way up. So yeah, that's it's pretty broad, I'm saying.
It's very broad. So there's lots of different roles within the main one. I mean, Oliver, from your perspective within games technology, is there a particular specialism that you think you want to go in?
So I very much enjoy the programming aspect, and in particular engine programming, which you may have heard of game engines like Unity and Unreal. Those are the popular ones that anyone can really work with, and it's essentially developing the tools in which you can create a game using. So that would be an awful lot of low-level programming, which the user tends to not see as much. There's also, I quite like Toolchain development, which is extending the engine to make developing parts of a specific game easier. And there's gameplay programming, which is a lot of, depending on the game type, it could be a lot of playing around with player physics and getting the game feel right, which is also slightly more design based role, because you have to think a lot more about it creatively.
Yeah. And then, Gabs, from your perspective, you referenced that, I mean, there's hundreds of people work within your organisation. And what sort of different things are they doing?
So, I mean, I feel like Neil and Oliver have pretty much honed into the huge array of different roles that there is within the organisation. If we were to focus just on the technology side, then to really, you know, not get too complex, then effectively within Roxor Gaming, we have game studios. So people within game studios would be responsible for the game's design. So they're actually creating the game itself. And then within game studios, we'd have all the people that will provide the assets for the game. So the designers, the illustrators, the animators. And then we have games platform, because once you create the game, you still got to get that game to its audience. So all of those games will sit on a platform, and those platforms need to be developed. So where you find your traditional front-end developers, Java developers, C++ in some organizations, but not within ours, or .NET, and they would be on more of the programming platform side.
Okay. Well, I mean, tell us as well, Gabs, what does an average day or a week look like then? So last year's been very different from normal, but what would the average day look like for one of your team?
It has been different, and people have had to learn to work alone or with Teams or Skype. So everyone's had different faces in their rooms, which has been strange, but we've all got used to it. I mean, if you were somebody who was aspiring to be a game developer or a programmer, and you were coming into the organisation from a technology perspective, then anyone joining would actually, their main focus would be testing, because that's the best way to learn how to be a programmer. It's the best way to understand how the games are working. So your first few weeks and probably year within the company would be about working with existing code, debugging it, fixing it, and extending that code. And all of these things you can learn actually, and I guess we'll probably go into that later, but you can start to teach yourself now at home as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I mean, Neil, from an animation perspective, what are the most enjoyable parts of the role?
Well, when I was in the industry, I loved it when you just ship the title and then you're on to your next role, and that's when you're starting the new idea. That's the creative bit. Everyone's getting together, or everyone's sort of working out how to create things. Everyone's talking to each other. It's quite a nice, fun time to sort of like you mill around, you go meet a programmer for a bit. That sounds great. Let's work on this. How are we going to get this working? Who are we going to choose to help out with that? Yeah, it's a really sort of fun, creative process. As things start to bog down, the role nowadays, you have things like Scrum management. Towards the end of my career, it's like very, very much more sort of like formulaic sort of process, which was good, because it was very sort of loosey-goosey when I started. It was like a bunch of indies almost on the N64 days, because it's such a new industry. But as the process is getting tighter, Scrum management really helps, where we would get together, we'd have a coffee in the morning, just for half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, and just talk about what we're doing that day, what we did yesterday, what are our goals for a few days' time, have we had any problems? These sort of little things that we could just jot down in groups of 6 roundabout, and then you would get together, like called Scrum managers, like one of those 6 would meet up with the other Scrum managers, and then that sort of like chain of command would go up and then back down. We can iron out where we are and really help the producers out gauging where we are. But yeah, the start process, that's what I loved. Just coming up with the ideas and creating the characters and working out the lore of the world and what we're going to be creating for the next year or 2 or even 5 years in some of those titles.
Yeah, and what about for you, Oliver? I mean, what was the sides of games technology and games design that you think you will find most appealing?
I definitely enjoy, as Neil said, the start of it, when you're brainstorming and getting all of the framework in place to start developing. When you have all of the ideas in your head of a project, that is definitely the most fun part of it. And there's also kind of, if you're perhaps just achieved a miniature deadline, like completing one big chunk of code, or making a really detailed model, that's definitely also very, very rewarding.
Gav, just on the flip side of that question, are there aspects of the role that perhaps people don't understand or they don't fully comprehend, that maybe aren't so enjoyable or perhaps slightly more challenging than people might envisage, that it would be worth sharing?
I think if you generally love what you do, and you know really clearly that the gaming industry is what you want to do, and you decide your discipline, so that might be to go into the art design world of it, or it might be to go into the programming world, then you will enjoy it. It will be brilliant. And what Neil said earlier on about the collaboration and the teamwork, that's so important, because you can't make a superb game without everyone communicating. And we're the entertainment industry, so we can't entertain our customers if we're not having some fun ourselves. So there's huge perks. But equally, I think when people are at home and they're, playing on their PlayStation or their Xbox, they don't necessarily see what's behind being a game developer and working in the industry. And you need a lot of patience. You need to work very hard, and you've got to be willing to put the work in. If there is something that's not going right in a game, it might not be a simple fix. You might have to spend weeks and weeks trying to work it out. So, you've got to have a bit of tenacity there.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Let's just move the conversation on a little bit to start considering your entry routes into the industry. So, I mean, let's start back with you again, Oliver. Can you just remind us, which subjects did you do when you were at school? I mean, take us right the way back to GCSE, I guess, and then into A level.
So GCSE, I did all of my core subjects, so maths, English, and I did triple science. And then for my 4 options, I did geography, business studies, graphic design, and Spanish. Though it gives you a very broader kind of skill set for what you want to go into when you eventually go into A level. I'd especially recommend kind of getting if for the games industry in particular, no matter what role you have, both mathematics skills, especially for programmers, and kind of the concept of working in 3D environments as well, or 2D if you decide to go down that route. So that is a lot of maths and some aspects of certain sciences. And then there's the more creative routes. So your English is your humanities, very good at giving you a broad kind of understanding of what it takes to come up with ideas. And then, yeah, so for A level, I went into maths, physics, no, not maths, my apologies. I went into physics, computer science, and product design. And that kind of gave me a very, another broad view of skills that are used in the game industry. So you have your computer science for the nitty-gritty programming aspect, especially for programming roles, but as well for all of the other roles. A lot of your role is coming up with solutions to problems, and you need to think computationally for this kind of thing. And yeah, physics is very useful for gameplay programming and engine programming in particular, as it gives you better understanding of maths. And product design is good for knowing kind of what will sell, that aspect of things, and creative thing.
Neil, the side that you sit on from the artistic side is I guess it's quite specific, but based on what Oliver's just said, then what sort of subjects you think might help someone wanting to get into the industry, and then talk, I guess, very clearly about the side and the things that you'd be looking for.
So the most of our students, I mean, we had this year, we've got a little over 1,000 applicants. We've only got about 100 places on the course. We've done really well at the rookies over the past 10 years. We won that 4 times, and that's really sort of helped publicise our course. So we are being quite choosy with our students this year. So it's obviously a portfolio is our #1 thing that we're really looking for. So we definitely like to see that. But for courses, yeah, just it would be great if you have covered an art course, because we definitely like to see traditional art skills. A lot of them do a 1-year art foundation, so they finish their national diploma or their A levels, and then they, especially the ones who have just maybe done math, science, and yeah, a language, then a lot of the time it is just a case of they have to go and do a 1-year art foundation. We do spend quite a lot of time with them, interviewing them every Friday, the whole team there, going through everyone. We try and spend 20 minutes, and we try and give them advice on what they're missing. We give them a little advice sheet. Yeah, it's but for me personally, it would be traditional art skills, things like perspective, color theory, life drawing. Have they tried 3D? Because they're going to be spending 3 years of their life on a BA doing 3D, so they want to make sure that they enjoy it. So I always recommend to download Blender because it's free and they can just try it. If they have tried Unity and Unreal, that's great. Hopefully their college might have been able to offer them that. That'd be a really good plus. If they've made any little indie games, anything, they could just make a little video of it and stick it up on ArtStation, that would be great. Have they tried any other software other than Blender? So maybe Substance, algorithmic software is free, so they might want to try some of that to take their models to a high level. Things like ZBrush or Mudbox is free, but Blender's great at sculpting these days. Higher software, Houdini, again, it's fantastic bit of software that's free for students. It's actually, they give it 6 months after you graduate, professional for the company as well, which is great. Adobe Suite, have they had any access to that? So I'm really looking for a lot of, well, good portfolio and obviously good A levels. I'm not sure what the quota was, but it was something like, it was AAB. It's all changed now. The language now, it's all maths now. It's like 10 is A and B for 9 and so on. But it's yeah, it was yeah, it's high grades. It's like I think it's a C for English, C for maths, and A levels. I can't remember what it was now. I have to check with Martin, but it is quite high. But it's yeah, that's how we whittled our applications down from over 1,000 down to about 600. We interview all those and just try and pick the best 100 out of those.
Yeah, okay. I mean, look, the only general advice that we would give for those of you that are considering degree courses or which university you should go to, most important thing is that you check very carefully via UCAS and see what the specific entry requirements are. So Neil's talking about a very specific course that's run at the University of Hertfordshire. Let me just bounce this back to Oliver for a moment. So Neil's discussing the animation side of it. I know you're not purely on the animation side, but how important from your perspective is some of those art skills or some of those creative skills in what you want to do? Because you said what you did, physics, product design and computer science. There's no real, I suppose, art in there. So where does that sit for you?
So a big part of games technology and the games industry as a whole is being able to work well with others and blend your work together into one massive project. So it's especially good, especially in building a portfolio, to have a really good understanding of, so if you want to make 2D games or 3D games, it's not good to limit yourself, but so you want to kind of have at least some knowledge of how assets are created. So 2D art is typically digital art in things like Illustrator or whatever software you have. 3D art, your Blender. Blender's the best thing to learn. I spent some time this year learning it because previously my skills were lacking, and especially for developing a portfolio when that's mostly including like pieces that you yourself have developed by on your own. Yeah, having a broad skill set is very good because it also opens up your career opportunities.
Of course, I think that's a really good point. Gabs, let me just bring you in here because I mean, Oliver's a student at university and Neil's a lecturer as well. You're an employer, so you see people at the back end of that. Is it having a degree essential to getting a job in this industry? And are there any other options or entry routes into it?
Yeah, so there's always apprentices. I think in the gaming industry, apprenticeships can be quite competitive to get, but they do exist. And there's a huge, there's so many gaming industries out there. Do your research, find out, contact them, approach them. But if you can't secure an apprenticeship in the gaming industry, then there's also loads of apprenticeships within technology companies where you can learn programming, like I mentioned before, and that would give you the basic skills to make you eligible for applying for, a graduate type role. Just because it says graduate on it doesn't mean you have to be a graduate to join at that level within a business. The other thing about degrees that hiring managers like is that because normally at that age people don't have a lot of experience, and by doing a degree you're showing that you can commit yourself to work, you can work as a team, and you can deliver projects on time. So it's evidence to them that you're able to do that. So all you need to do is prove to them that you can do that, even though you haven't got the degree. And you're going to do that by building out that portfolio to showcase some of your work, by creating games. And some of the gaming engines that are free, like Phaser.io, that allows 3D rendering. That's 2D. Unreal allows 3D, and Unity as well. So it's not a must, but if you don't have it, then you need to show some other goods to prove that this is what you really want to do. And then the other, I suppose, courses that are good in this area would be mathematics, information, technology, computer science. That's for the programming side.
Sure.
And also mentioned for art.
And from your perspective, Gaz, I mean, you must get lots of CVs and you must have lots of people applying for jobs with you. How important is it to you, the qualification someone is, and how would you balance that against the skills or qualities that they might be able to bring to your organisation?
So honestly, if someone sent a CV through and they didn't have very, very good grades, I would think, are they going to be okay? But if they had a portfolio, if they had a really good cover letter that showed me that they paid attention to who we are and they're genuinely interested, then I would actually find that a lot more impressive than someone who had just thrown a CV into the application and had a computer science degree.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a really good answer. And Oliver, when we spoke on the phone the other day, you alluded to some of the skills and qualities I think that you've recognised are really important in this industry. So do you just want to tell everybody, kind of regardless of the qualifications, what sorts of skills and qualities do you think are really important?
So no matter what area in games you want to get into, the most important skill is being able to meet a deadline. Because a lot of development is essentially planning and preparation and making sure you meet your requirements that you have set out for yourself, or the company that you're working for has set out for yourself for the project. It's definitely the most important skill. You'll notice when you first start to work on it, if you ever have a deadline, say if you go into a university course, your first ever assignment, you will have to essentially what's called crunch in the industry towards the end. And hopefully by the time you get a job, you will have developed good enough time management skills to never have to do that, because it does put a large amount of stress on your body.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, Neil, that must resonate with you as a lecturer who's probably setting work for your students all the time, the importance of meeting deadlines. Are there any other sorts of skills or softer skills that you notice your better students and more capable students and some of your past colleagues have had?
Yeah, so other skills to pick up on that. So I guess a lot of it would be looking into conferences, like there's SIGGRAPH. There's the GDC in America. That's a really good one. Go dig into the archives and see if you can pick up some skills there. Technical writing skills. That's every designer I worked with was very good at sort of researching into their area, having good understanding of logic, so analysis and appraising, sort of like any arguments around. It's not just like coming up with crazy ideas. They really sort of analyze their ideas. I think while you're on the course, you sort of tend to pick up, we're about 1/3 international, so we have people from Pakistan, China, Australia, all sorts. So one of the great things about our course is that you do meet a lot of different people from different religions and history and cultures, and that really helps inform artists and designers. So hopefully they get a better understanding of geography around the world, because that really helps make so it makes them avoid the faux pas that even I see, like mixing landmarks like Aztec pyramids with Cambodian or Egyptian artifacts within it. They get rid of all that just because they have an interest in it. Picking I see little things like in the game, I might see something like a bit of rebar in an old castle wall or something, and that's something that wasn't invented until 1850, the rebar inside concrete. So there's all these little skills that sort of I think when you work in the university, you sort of pick up and help each other. So yeah, just we also offer critical and cultural studies, so that can really help with just understanding sort of lots of different aspects of games design, especially a lot of terminology. There's a lot of terminology to learn, right from what sort of game it is. Is it FPS for first-person shooter to top-down side scroller? Then there's all the things like the awards, is it a freemium model, or is it a subscription model? How is it you're going to launch? How are you going to get funding? And that's another great thing about coming to universities, because you might join a society where there'll be someone from business studies who just really wants to, they get excited about formulating a business model and producing the game. They don't really care too much about the art or the design. They just want to get something up and running. And so we've had quite a lot of indies started with that. So, and that's something I'd encourage any student to do, is join a society at any university, because we have about 2,000 or so. It's like anything from jogging or canoeing or running, whatever. Just meet other people from different disciplines, because that can really help as well. Going forward, that cross-pollination, that's the terminology I'm looking for. That will really help.
And I think that's a good life skill to be aware of as well, Neil. So that's a point very well made. Just going to move on now, and then we're going to start taking the questions that you guys have submitted. And for those of you that have joined us a little bit late, you can still submit questions via the questions tab in the text box in there. There's quite a few in there already, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. But I think it's just worth discussing the prospects for the games design industry. And just to make sure that you're all confident that this is an industry that there is going to be continued growth in, and there is going to be demand for in the future. So, I mean, first of all, Gabs, what level of demand is there for games technology now, and what do you think that will be like in the future?
Well, it's a hugely growing market. I mean, it just gets bigger and bigger every year. Last year, it made over £4 billion in the UK, which is more than fashion, TV and film put together. So, you know, it makes money, and companies like to have money, so I think it will only continue to grow. So yeah, prospects are good, and you see more and more gaming companies come about. What you tend to find now is you'll have a gaming company that will be quite small, that will grow to a certain size, and then it will be bought out by a larger company that might be a PLC company. But there will always be small ones that exist, and there'll always be huge ones as well.
Yeah, Oliver, let me bring you in here. I guess many teenagers in particular love playing computer games, and some of them, I guess, will consider that there might be a career in it for them, and I'll say you're very much in that boat as well. So when did you realise that this wasn't just a hobby or something you enjoyed doing? It's something that genuinely there's a career and a job and a future in this for you.
So for me, the biggest kind of turning point was when I made my first game. There are game jams that anyone can join, really. That is essentially, you have a limited amount of time, typically something between 2 days and a week, and no matter your skill level, you can kind of get down, even if you've got no experience, learn and make a game, either by yourself or with a group. And that was, so I made a game for a game jam. That was my first time using the Unity game engine, which is, I would highly recommend learning either Unity or Unreal if you're looking to go into a role such as programming, or any kind of role where you would be using a engine. And that was very much a revelation. I was like, this could potentially be a career path that I went down. And as I mentioned earlier, I went to a University Open Day, and yeah, my eyes were kind of open. There are the gaming industry is so massive, and there are so many different roles that you can get into it. Even past the programming, designing, and art roles, there's translation even, and lots of different roles. So it definitely is something that isn't out of the question. It might be a matter of just self-determination to learn something new. But definitely once you start to notice that you could be a games developer is when you'll start looking into the games that you kind of play and pointing out how a certain feature was implemented, or all of the or realizing how much effort was put behind the scenes, rather than just seeing the game for the game.
Sure. And then, Neil, I guess I'm asking you here to speak to the parents that might be watching this at the moment. So the parents of teenagers who are telling mum and dad, I want to go and be a games designer, and parents perhaps not having a perception of what that is. What would you say to those parents out there with regards to prospects and the growth of this industry?
Yeah, it's becoming a very diverse industry. It's not just games now. I mean, we have students now going into like automotive industry. They're off to Bentley and McLaren, especially with virtual reality technology now, where you can actually sculpt the cars. Quite a lot of architectural visualization. There's especially real-time technology in that, because obviously you can change the time of day, change the materials instantly. This is like talking to people around the world about a particular building, and they can change things instantly. Aeronautic industry, we do live projects with Airbus. Film pre-visualization, that's a really big part of it now. It's starting to explode. There's a program called The Mandalorian on Disney. It was the Unreal Engine is used in the background and the actors act in front of it. So Pinewood and Elstree, Bournemouth, they're all just down the road. Sky's moving into Hertford as well, and there's 2,000 plus workforce going to be there. So yeah, film visualization is going to be a big area. Military simulation, lots of students go into that. Medical, we just had a doctor last week saying we need to be able to train our junior doctors. This is like a senior doctor who stops people from losing their limbs. So he shows junior doctors how to replumb arteries, but they could really do with the extra help of real time where they can just move things apart. I did my medical simulation on asthma. I explained how all the capillaries work and everything. So using a similar sort of system for that. Theatrical production, virtual reality, augmented reality is just about to kick off. We're starting to see it now with HoloLens. So I don't think people quite realize how huge that area is going to be once it does start kicking off. We had some students who started a company called Rewind over in St. Albans, and they're up to about 50 people now doing various different virtual reality launches. So yeah, it's not just games, it's becoming a very big, and there's like hundreds of other areas as well that haven't, like gambling, there's all sorts of mobile. Yeah, people do, just mentioning that, mobiles and telephones. People don't realize out of this 140 billion industry, 40% of that area is tablets and mobile phones, and it's really sort of quite untapped, I think, at university. Something I've just started to sort of push a little bit more, looking on that side of things. So yeah, it's just diversifying all the time. It's tricky to keep on top of.
Well, as a parent of a teenager, you've certainly convinced me, Neil. If my stepson told me that this was the industry for him, I would be far more confident now. Oliver, just tell us about the part-time job you're doing now, because I think that'd be really interesting off the back of what Neil's just explained.
Yeah, so my part-time job is in VR development, and as Neil mentioned, it is very rapidly growing. If you put that you've got experience in VR development on your CV, people will come to you. You don't have to search for the job. So a lot of that is actually just know-how within game engines. So in my role there, I don't do as much programming as I do using the tools available within the engine to like place objects around the place and visualize a scene. So I'm currently making a VR guided tour of what is a ship. So I'm essentially contracted out via my university's in-house studio, which a lot of universities will have, to work for a company that does in the ships industry. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It's always nice to have a little bit of money on the side as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Gab, just to round off this section before we start answering the questions that have come in directly, of which there are quite a few already. For most of our people watching this will live in Hertfordshire. Now, how far are they going to have to travel to get a job within this industry?
So in the world, the 5 top gaming companies are California, so that's quite far if you want to go over there, Vancouver, Stockholm, but the other 2 are London, which I don't believe is far from Hertfordshire at all, and also the sleepy town of Guildford, which is actually where I am, although Roxall Gaming is based in London. Guildford has over 30 different gaming companies within it, and a massive one called EA. And then in London, you do tend to have more of the gambling gaming companies, but then you've also got the likes of Sony, I'm sure you're all aware of PlayStation, and Bossa Studios, which is a smaller gaming studio that have won BAFTAs for the games they've created. So London and Guildford, I don't think it's too far.
No, I don't think it is. I think that's that's close, and it's good to know that there's such opportunities on the doorstep for people living in Hertfordshire. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to go to questions that anyone in the audience has got. So anything that Gabs, Oliver, or Neil has said that you want to perhaps a little bit more about, now's your chance to submit those questions via the questions tab on your dashboard. So first one I'm going to ask, I'm going to send this one to Oliver actually, because this came in during the registration, so someone submitted this one earlier, and I think it's quite a specific one. How can I create a fun video game lava level, e.g. Melty Molten Galaxy, that follows the rules of real-life lava and volcanoes?
So very specific question. It depends on the type of game you're playing, of course. So let's say, as you mentioned, Molten Galaxy, which I believe is from Super Mario 3D platformer. So one thing that I picked up on is you want the realistic physics of a volcano for the lava. So that would involve fluid simulations. So you'd be running realistic physics calculations every kind of frame to simulate where the lava would be. Typically, simulations haven't really been so much of a part of the games industry except for physics. But now that computers are becoming more and more powerful, we're starting to see that real-time simulation is possible. Other than that, so making a lava level, in terms of gameplay design and level design, that brings, for a 3D platformer, it brings a lot of possibilities for making difficult levels, because you could have the player be damaged when they fall into the lava. And in terms of if you wanted a volcano to erupt, a lot of that in games would be done through animations, not through physics, until computers get much more powerful. So that would be kind of having a knowledge of 3D assets and also particle systems, which are quite specific to game and film industries, and that's essentially working with essentially physics of small little objects. Yeah, very specific question, but kind of opens up to a lot of areas in the game industry, that does.
That's a very good question as well, and you've certainly educated on that one. Gabs, let me ask you this question. This was also sent in during registration. How is job security in the field? Now, we've spoken about this being a good industry with good prospects, but what about job security?
Well, people continue to play games and buy games, so as long as people are doing that and that suddenly stop, then you're going to be okay in your job. Because even when the larger companies buy the smaller companies, they bought the smaller companies because they want them inside the larger companies. So you'll find you'll just do something called two-pay, and then you'll move into the bigger business. So yeah, good. But equally, it's not, you know, if you decide to go and join the gaming industry, you're not writing your life story and having to end it there. We have people who come to us and then move on to the financial sector or fintech sector. And similarly, we get people from those sectors that join us. So it's the skills you're learning that will keep you employed, not the industry itself.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Now, I suspect this one's probably for Oliver, so I'm going to ask you first of all. But Neil or Gabs, if you want to come in on this one, please do. It's another very specific question as well. When constructing the law and the rules of a games world, how much should I care about realism and conforming to real life rules? At what point does an overuse of artistic license ruin the suspicion of disbelief?
I think that's a very good question for game design roles. So a part of games that makes them so fun is how different they are from reality. And you can go really creative with that. You could have a game where you play as a snake, there's Snake Pass, and you have to do puzzle platforming things. In terms of gameplay, I think the most important thing to take away is that the system that you've got in place should make sense to the player. It should be able to teach the player what's going on within the world without having to make them think so much about it. So that comes mostly through play testing and also sticking to certain real world law things. So, for example, an explosive barrel might be red because that's a common kind of usage across the games industry. But in terms of world building, you can definitely get away with a lot in games. The same goes for books. It's definitely a form of escapism, playing games for many people. So kind of looking into what is possible in games that isn't possible in real life definitely does improve the experience for players. And in particular, the VR industry is definitely interested in that. You could have games where you're in zero gravity environments. You could have games where you're climbing up a mountain using the controllers. So yeah, it's another question that does kind of go into many areas in games.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, Neil, you spoke earlier about how important it is for you that people, when they're designing games, that they, that attention to detail is important. But what about from you, from the perspective, where is that balance between realism and the in-game experience?
Yeah, it's thinking about what it is you're right from the start. What is it you want to create? And that's where games jams, Oliver mentioned it earlier, can be fantastic, because things like Grand Theft Auto, Minecraft, some of the biggest games in the world were just bashed out from a simple games jam. So yeah, I mean, he tried for Minecraft, for example, he just tried voxel graphics for a couple of days and thought, oh, you know what, this is actually working. And then spent a week on it, and then people getting really excited about it online, and it just snowballed from that. So yeah, just think about if you're, I think going indie is a great way to start. You'll learn a lot of mistakes, you'll make a lot of mistakes very fast, and you'll learn from those mistakes. Get some asset packs from Unity or the Unreal Marketplace. There's loads of really good free content. If you use the Unreal Marketplace, for example, there's something called Megascans. It's really high-end quality photogrammetry. You can just drop it into the engine and just try stuff out and see what it's, try maybe some different games really quickly. Just try a top-down game, a first-person game, and just try and make it fun, play around with the physics, come up with an idea, and then start thinking about what is it going to look like? Are you going to do like voxel art, or are you going to do something very post-processed, very colorful? Realism, the trouble is when you go down the realistic route, it can tighten up, and it can, it's quite tricky to make it fun. So yeah, you have to really think about that quite cleverly. But when you do stylized stuff, I mean, I'm when I was at Rare, it was very stylized, a lot of the games. So Banjo-Kazooie and Donkey Kong and all these sort of, they're very stylized Nintendo bright sort of colors. So yeah, just I think the biggest thing is to have fun. So many people get caught up with doing realism, and it suddenly it's not fun, and the game launches and it sinks. So just got to make sure it's fun at the end of the day. That's the way, or interesting to people. That's yeah, really important.
Sure, I think that's such a fantastic question. You both of you have answered that so well. I mean, Gabs, is there anything that you would add from your company's perspective?
Well, I don't pretend to be a games developer or a designer. I just hire the people that come in. So I don't, I think Oliver and Neil have probably definitely said the right stuff. I mean, from our company though, Roxy Gaming, none of their games are realistic. They're all characters and animation and bright colours, obviously for over 18s. But yeah, none of that's realistic, and they are really fun, and people keep playing them because of that reason.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. This I'm not really sure the context behind this one, but I'll just ask it. So whoever wants to take this one, please do. What section would beta testers be put in?
Testers, well, as soon as you start making it, get it in there as quick as possible. The sooner you get feedback, don't leave it. Don't ever leave it. But post, if you're an artist, post on Polycount. If you're a games designer, then just go to like Gamasutra and those sort of forums, and anywhere you can post and just get feedback as soon as possible. It's so important just to launch stuff and just see what it's like. I mean, I made as well as games, I made medical simulations, and it's people just click the wrong buttons. I remember going to Sony, that was quite funny, on the iToy stuff. And you'd watch a family behind a mirrored wall, and you're more or less like wanting to scream at them, just like, push that button, it's so obvious. You think it's obvious, but it's not. So yeah, and you just write all these mistakes down, you go back to development, and so the sooner you do that, the better, because you can iron out a lot of mistakes very quickly.
For sure.
And in terms of testing as a career, it's something that you should be a little bit cautious about. You can find job offers to work for, say, a week or whatever, or be a part of a focus group for a game who wants to test their game on individuals. Whereas if you kind of get into any role in the games industry, part of that job will be playtesting it. You want to make sure that what you've got is good. So any role in the industry kind of lets you kind of play around with testing, and the more you test something, the more you know what makes a great game. So I'd be a bit cautious on saying I'm going to be a game tester. You probably want, but while you can get experiences and be part of testing, it may not be a permanent career path.
Sure.
But it's a great, you know, if we're talking about QA testers and engineers, it is a brilliant foundation. And you do have people who are QA managers and QA leads. So there definitely is a route down there, but maybe a bit more select. And there are more candidates in the marketplace that can do it, so it's a bit more competitive.
Okay, thank you. This one, I'm going to go to Oliver first of all. In fact, you might be able to knock this one out of the park, Oliver. Which programming languages are most popular and most likely to be used in the gaming industry?
So what you see most often is C++, C#, and Java, because those are often the most performative languages. There's a new language called Rust that's starting to get some traction, which is C++, but without the difficulty. Well, without as much bloat. In general, so if you're just starting out programming, you can learn any programming language. I started out with Python. It's not great for making games because it's interpreted, which means that it effectively it performs slower than languages like C++. C++ is a difficult language to learn, but once you learn it, you can do anything. It teaches you so much about programming and computers in general. So depending what you want to get into, I would definitely recommend kind of mastering at least one language. Any kind of language works, but a lot of so most game engines work mostly on C++ side for scripting. Unity and Unity uses C#, which is C++, but slightly easier to work with. But yeah, once you learn one programming language, you can easily learn any other language. It's just languages like C++ might take a little bit of getting used to.
Sure. I think in my very, very limited knowledge of computer programming, Neil, that Oliver's probably answered that conclusively. Is there anything that you would want to add to that answer?
I would add that in Unreal, there's this beautiful thing called blueprints where you just can try. It's a bunch of nodes, spaghetti nodes, and it's really like when you click go and you just try and simulate it, you can see where everything's sort of going and hooking up. And if there's a problem, you can quite easily debug it. And if you want, and that's quite a good way of starting to explore programming, because you might think that's not exactly doing what I want. You get the manuals out and you will learn how to C++, just a little node just to do something that maybe something, I don't know, traffic lights or a door opening, or so it's not quite doing what you want to do. And then you the snowball starts to roll and you go, oh, I can do this, I can do that, and your knowledge will expand. So blueprints is in Unity, there is, I can't remember what it's called now, Game Maker Pro or something. There's a little plugin that you could.
There's Bolt, which is essentially the same thing. It's a plugin for Unity.
Yeah, they're both really good. Can I quickly mention as well, I did say there's a website called Tiger, TIGA.
Yes.
It's in the feed, yeah, because Tiger's a great place to go and learn, as is Polycount forums and the game dev map to sort of see globally where lots of companies are around the world.
Sure. Well, yeah, and the final question that we've got, and it's a really good opportunity to share some useful websites with you. So the question that came in was, where can I start if I want to design a game? And say, and that's a beautifully poised question, because the final thing that we wanted to share with you was some websites that you may want to be aware of. So Gabs, you told us about a couple of these. Why might people use the websites that we can see on the screen now? Oh, Gabs, we've just lost your sound.
Sorry, rookie error. I've got a dog that's crying in the background. Apologies, locked himself in. So if we were doing, I think there's Phaser. I just can't see. Is it Phaser? What are the ones there that we wrote down?
There was unity.com, Phaser.io, then Code Academy, and Free Code Camp.
Okay, so the two at the bottom are places that you can go online for free and obviously learn how to do programming. All of the languages that Oliver mentioned would be good to learn. 100% are, and you can learn how to do them all from that. A lot of people actually just start off with HTML, which is really simple. And you know, if you don't like HTML, you might not get your head around it. So it's a good place to start. And then Phaser.io is the 2D game engine that we mentioned. Unity is the one that both Oliver and Neil really recommended, and Unreal is 3D. And I'm pretty sure that you can create games in those game engines for free on those sites.
Yeah, so Unity, as long as you're not some big company that's making a lot of games, you can develop, publish, and release games for free. The same goes for Unreal. I believe they have a certain minimum money that you have to make off of a project. But yeah, you can sell your games for free off of those. And there's also certain programs. So for 3D modeling, there's Blender, which is open source, which means that it's free in every aspect, and it's really good to learn. And the same goes for there's Godot game engine, which might be a little bit difficult to learn, but it's free in every aspect.
Okay, Neil, you've also suggested Unreal there. My inability to multitask has prevented me from adding that to this slide at the moment, but I think we've just spoken about it there. So just to clarify the name of the website.
So the Unreal, I think it might be called Unreal Engine. So let me just go back up. So yeah, that's we're an academic partner of those, so we definitely want to push those guys. The unrealengine.com. Great engine, and yeah, like Oliver said, you don't have to pay them anything until you make £100,000, and even then, it's only 5% of the royalties. So unless you're making GTA sort of money, I wouldn't really worry about it. It's because it's going to cost you a lot more than that to make a games engine from the ground up. So so yeah, that's a great one. There was one more I mentioned, was the Game Maker Pro. It's a side scroller, might be quite fun for, or top down sort of, you can do pixel art type stuff. Might be a fun one to play around with. But mainly Unity and Unreal Engine. If you stick with those ones, you can't go too far wrong.
Yeah, sure. a lot of game studios will have their own tools, but having skills in any one of those engines will mean that you'll be easily able to adapt to their engine.
Sure. Okay, well, look, we're just going to wrap up now, so we're just going to conclude. So thank you firstly to all of you who've submitted your questions as we've gone through. On your screen at the moment, you should be able to see, again, our HOP website, and you can see some of the social media handles that we've got. So HOP is there to help you learn about a variety of different careers, not just games design, but a variety of different careers, particularly some of those that will be really relevant in Hertfordshire. The video that we've recorded today, for those of you watching live at the moment, will be available on the HOP website, probably from tomorrow afternoon via our YouTube account. If you were to get a screen grab of that QR code that you can see at the moment, that will take you directly to all the previous webinar sessions that we've done. So we cover a different industry every week. You may well find there's some other ones that will be useful. For example, back last summer, we had someone from visual effects from the Warner Brothers studios down in Leavesden. So there'll definitely be some crossover with particularly some of the things that Neil's spoken to you about today. So look, just in conclusion, Oliver, could you just try and explain to someone, if they are, what, 15, 16, 17 at the moment, they think this is the career for them, think back to where you were 4 or 5 years ago, what would be the most important thing that they should do off the back of watching this session today?
If it's something that you're interested in, then you should definitely try learning, try something new. And if you're convinced that you want to get into this kind of area, develop a portfolio. No matter what role you're going to get into, your portfolio is going to be the thing that gets you the job above all else. Going to a university is a very good way to guide yourself through the route of making a portfolio, but it is possible to get into a job in the games industry having come straight out of sixth form or college, as long as you've got the experience and the skills that you need.
Okay, thank you very much, Oliver. Neil, from your perspective, so for anyone who's considering going to university, whether that would be an animation specific course, what would be the most important thing that they should consider in choosing their university course and to help them actually get in through the application process?
I would definitely say to the lecturers, or can I see your portfolio? What's their backgrounds? Find out who all the lecture staff are, where have they been, what have they done in the industry. Then what can I see last year's students' work? Not like the past 10 years, but the very best of like last year's students. What awards have they got? Have they won like the Tiger Awards like we did last year? Have they won the Rookies? Have they won? Well, I mean, we've had 140 shortlisted animations internationally, so anything like that would be great. So yeah, that would be my biggest things. Going back to the Unity and Unreal, I forgot to mention on the websites they're really good for learning content. There's like loads of right from the ground zero basics and any of the disciplines, programming or art. So that'd be a great thing to just try. There's Blender, lots of free stuff there, fabulous bit of free software. And it's being supported now by Ubisoft, and Epic Games just gave them a big grant as well. So it looks like that's going to be quite a bright and rosy future.
Sure. And then final word from Gabs, really. So from a recruiter's perspective, what advice would you give to anyone watching this at the moment? What's going to make their CV and their application really stand out for you?
Okay, so the first thing I'd say for anyone that's that believes they're interested, go and find a job description that one of the gaming companies are hiring for, and have a look at what you don't know on that job description and what you're willing to learn. Because first of all, you need to be willing to learn it all in order to move into that role anyway, and you'll certainly have to learn it all in the job. And secondly, research the company that you're interested in. It is competitive, so if you have been given the time for an interview, then make sure you go to that interview prepared. Make sure you looked up that company on the website. It's simple research, everything's at our fingertips. And think about your soft skills as well. It's brilliant if you've learned all the programming skills, but we want people who will work as a team. So focus on some of your personality traits too.
Thank you. I think that's a really good message to conclude with, not just specific to the games design, but the same across all industries and all areas of recruitment. So finally, let me just thank our three panelists. So to Oliver, to Neil and to Gabs for giving up their very precious time to share their experiences and their knowledge with you today. We hope for all of you watching it, whether you're watching it live or whether you're watching it back later, this has been really useful for you, that it's been really informative, that you'll have a really good understanding of what your next steps should and could be, and that you're really inspired to go and join an industry that's absolutely booming and will be a fantastic place for you to carry out your careers. So thank you to everybody involved in the production of today's session, and best of luck for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.